This happened in the summer of 2015. I live near Boston. It happened in a town called Westin on Church Street. I've lived there my whole life, never saw it before, haven't seen it again. Driving over this small bridge over an abandoned railroad track, I was driving with my girlfriend at the time and my sister. Someone told me, look down. There it was, standing on the edge of the abandoned railroad tracks. It wasn't standing behind a tree or in the woods, it was right there. At least 8 feet tall, 450 pounds, just standing there watching that occasional car go over that bridge. Driving over the bridge, I said, you guys just see that? And they were too busy talking, two women. They're like, see what? I made a U-turn. We parked right there. We watched it for a good 5 minutes. Here's the most, I can't even talk because I get too excited about this. But here we go. This is how I know it wasn't a bear standing on two legs. And I know it wasn't a guy in a costume because here we go. My sister, to this day, said she saw a silhouette of it. And I hate to use the word blurry, but she saw like a blurry silhouette of the same thing that I saw perfectly. My girlfriend at the time didn't see it at all. We all had the same exact view. How do you explain that? Here we go. I've always believed. It shows itself to you if you believe in the thing, okay? My sister's always been right down the middle of the road. She kind of saw it, but she didn't see it. My girlfriend at that time never believed in ghosts, aliens, or Bigfoot. She didn't see it at all. 3 different experiences with the same exact view. That fits like the perfect jigsaw puzzle piece, okay? So in other words, you could probably walk right by the thing, unless you might smell it, okay? You wouldn't even know it was there if you don't believe in it.
I mean, you said, like, if you wanted to see it, you'll see it. Or do you think that sometimes maybe you think you see something because you want to see something?
Well, I wasn't even looking for it. Someone just told me, look, as I drove over the bridge, and it caught my eye. Again, it was like 8 feet tall, 450 pounds, okay? So, like I say, it was weird. The whole thing was, it's life-changing when you have this kind of experience. And I know what I saw, and I can't say this enough. I don't do drugs. I wasn't drinking, and I'm not delusional. I'm a little out there. I've seen a lot of stuff in my life. Sometimes with people, sometimes by myself. But trust me, this was the most intense moment of my life, and I'm 63 years old. It was the most intense 5 minutes of my entire life, and I've seen a lot of things and been a lot of places. But that is absolutely true story. Take it to the bank.
And at the time, were you convinced it was Bigfoot, or did you kind of have to think about it a little bit more?
It was 100% Bigfoot, man. I mean, it was the brown fur, dark brown face, longer arms. It wasn't jumping around, but you could see it was alive. It was just standing there. Like I say, it was just curious about that occasional car that was going over the bridge. Again, this was in the town of Westin, Massachusetts, on Church Street.
Well, it's like this. When I was 12 years old, I was at my camp in Northwood, around Lucas Pond, and I was up in the woods playing, having a good time, looking around, you know, as kids do.
Yep.
And I saw what I thought was some weird guy walking through the woods, as my father called him, some old dirty hippie. So I brushed it off as that. And then a couple of years goes by, and there was a show back in my day, because you got a couple more ice cream seasons to catch up with me, but it was called In Search Of. And
Leonard Nimoy.
Leonard Nimoy, yes.
Do not.
But only because of Star Trek, you know who he is.
No, I know of In Search Of.
You're that old?
No, I've just studied it because I've been investigating Bigfoot for a few years.
Well, that was my first time that I saw that, and I'm like, it kind of lightened onto Marblehead because I had now put a name to what I had seen.
Yeah.
And when I told my father that that's what I saw, because, you know, my old man, being my old man, was, you know, shut up, you didn't see that. You're goddamn fool. It was probably just somebody running around trying to scare you. So for a long time, I was in disbelief of it. And then later on down the road, when I was, 15, 16, I guess, 17, I was out there fishing at a little brook, creek, as you want to call it, called the Stingy River. And I heard a stick snap, you know, the typical story that you hear.
Yep.
And I turned around and I saw something move behind the banking that I was down on. So it was up past my point of view. And I assumed it was somebody that I knew or whatever. So I went up, and this thing was walking away from me. By that time, it had already traveled probably 50 feet by the time I got to the banking, because, you know, short legs, vertically challenged.
Yeah.
But because it was kind of a muddy banking and stuff, so by the time I climbed myself up there, it had been walking away, and it looked like a big, hairy, naked person. You know what I mean? That's all the only way I can describe it. And,
How tall?
well, I really weren't a good judge of height at that point, but if I had to guess, it was probably 7.5 feet tall. Knowing what I know now, I'd say it was probably somewhere around 600, 700 pounds, maybe. When it finally realized that I had come up over the bank, and because, I mean, it beat feet and it covered ground that I couldn't cover, let alone, you know, on a dead run. But then there was a couple more times, you know, I had seen a few other things, but that was my big intro to it, was when I seen it in Lucas Pond area, and then I saw it again. And when, you know, Leonard Nimoy, as you said, he shed light on it for me to knowing what I was looking at. And then it was out of control after that for me, because I needed to know. I wanted answers. I wanted to know where, what, when, why, what, how, whatever, you know what I mean?
Have you had any of your own sightings?
I've had two. One in 2011, and it was standing next to a utility pole, basically watching our campfire. And I was the only one to see it because I was the only one to walk to my car to retrieve some batteries. And I shone my flashlight around, and there it was, standing next to the utility pole. It stayed there until I kind of shook the flashlight a little bit, walked off, got my other team out. They found where it had walked into the forest. And while we're doing that, the base camp had basically said they heard some movement going on there.
Cool.
My first encounter with Bigfoot was on Prospect Mountain in the Lake George area of New York. I was there on the off season, early April, and I was with a research partner of mine. And, you know, at the time, we were really just two friends out hiking. We weren't, you know, full-blown researchers yet, but we're walking down the road. It's about 6 o'clock in the evening. And I said, hey, let's practice our Sasquatch calls. So, you know, we start, going off with our calls, and something starts answering us, which was really incredible. So that went on for about 15 minutes. And then we got the heck out of there because we were scared. Now, if that happened to me, I would have stuck around to see what it was. But I think that was probably a Sasquatch, and what validated that were my experiences in Oregon when I was studying there for 4 months under some really amazing researchers, one of which is my research partner today. So out in Oregon, we were in the Mount Hood National Forest in an area that there had been a ton of sightings. People were casting footprints. This research group I was studying under was yielding a lot of evidence out of this area. And so they brought me along to show me. We were driving down old logging roads where we heard some incredible vocalizations. And I also had an experience where we heard some rock clacking coming from the tree line. And then all of a sudden I heard an ape-like grunt and smelled this very pungent ape-like odor. So I've had a few experiences out there, but perhaps the most amazing experience I had was seeing one in the middle of the night. It was almost midnight, and we were out on private property that we had exclusive access to. And, you know, we're walking around. All of a sudden, we hear cracking and crunching and, you know, quietly, but it was definitely there. Something was walking through the woods. And before I knew it, I'm staring into the tree line. The moonlight is beautiful and bright. You could see kind of in between each tree. And I see this huge man-like figure step between two trees, kind of look at us, and then walk off. It was the most incredible experience. And at the time I thought, there's no way that could have been a Sasquatch because it was too big. Yeah. And afterwards, we measured. It was about 7.5 foot, which puts it in the range of an adult male Sasquatch. But, you know, in the moment, you can't imagine the size of them until you see one yourself.
Yeah, Mike, to be honest, like, I hear a lot of these stories, and it's only so believable. Like, people say they see it when they're a kid, but don't realize what it is until they're an adult. But, like, for me, I haven't seen it. I haven't heard it. Like, I don't know. I can't subscribe to be like, yeah, it's out there. Especially if I haven't seen anything that's even compelling evidence.
You know, I hear stories all the time of people hearing things when they were younger and then learning about Bigfoot and then deciding that's what it was. Right now, I can only take them in and be supportive and try to get what I can out of them. I haven't had an encounter myself. Right. So I take these stories for what they are in hopes that maybe if it's out there, then show me.
Yeah.
Show me Bigfoot, show me your evidence.
Yeah.
And let's talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's where I'm at with it too.
It's crazy because I'm a guy that didn't go out looking for anything.
Right.
I own 3 acres in what's called the Bridgewater Triangle in Massachusetts. And it abuts 94 acres of conservation. About a mile out is what's called the Taunton River.
Yep.
And I own the property since 2002. And I'd say about 2008 or so, I started noticing different noises, sounds from the woods. So I started hearing walking around and breaks and stuff. I didn't think much of it. I found myself at night, like on the couch, going, what was that sound? You know what I mean? Like, what was out there breaking stuff? And it went on, this went on for months, like 6 months. And then I started noticing events happening at my house closer to me.
Okay.
One particular time I was out in the yard raking around this fire pit I have, cleaning up all the loose wood and stuff. And I heard something walk, and I didn't look yet. I was raking, and I heard about I'd say about 8 to 10 inch elm or oak.
Yeah.
Snap in one pull. It went, and I turned like this, and I just saw it coming down. And it was in my property. You have to understand, I have a game trail.
Yeah.
It's all dense woods. It opens up into a clearing and then goes back to dense woods and wetlands, right? Yep. So I just froze. I absolutely froze. And I went, what in the hell was that? So I grabbed my phone, I held my phone up and I said, come on, where you at? And I held my phone up and you can hear it on my YouTube channel. The thing goes, but I couldn't see it. I swear it had to be no more than 50 yards from me, but it was locked into that dense area. And at first I was brave, right? You get that man thing, and I'm like, this is your property, this is my,
bro.
yeah, Richie B. And I'm like,
No, to Bigfoot, you're Richard.
Yeah, hello, Richard. And I'm like, you stay there, I'll stay here, this is my property, and I'm talking to it, and then I go, and then it hits me, the fight or flight human thing hits me, and I'm like, what am I doing? I just heard a guttural sound with a creature I can't see.
Yeah.
So I have about an acre of grass fenced in, so I started backing up to the street where I felt safer. And I literally had my hands on my knees like this, and I had a process.
Yep.
And it went on for like 5 minutes, and then I called a buddy of mine, and he's a preacher in South Carolina. And I'm like, I call him and I said, I'm gonna send you a video, and I don't know what just happened in my life, but it changed. And he's like, what are you talking about? And I sent it, and he goes, dude, something growled at you. And I said, yeah, man. I said, remember all the noises I told you I've been hearing? He's like, yeah. I said, I just put something physical with it.
All right, we're here with Wojo of Banter with Richie B, and we want to talk about Bigfoot with you, man. Tell us about, kind of when you started believing in Bigfoot, where this kind of interest began, and experiences and encounters you've had.
Well, thank you for having me on. I think it all started when I was a kid, when you have shows like In Search Of, and I was always intrigued of the paranormal, UFOs, and especially Bigfoot. And so then, I've had like some encounters with, well, not encounters, but I've seen like what I thought they were strange, like UFOs up, heading to work one day. You see something kind of like shooting across, and then it stops for about three long seconds, shooting up in the air. I'm like, now I'm starting to like believe there are other beings out around, and so on and so forth. Now comes Richie B. I've known Richie for 20 years. Played softball together, and then one day on his he had a podcast going about Bigfoot. So I asked him about his what's this about your podcast? He goes, yeah, I have Bigfoot in my backyard. I go, I think that's cool, whatever. And then he called me the next day. He goes, hey, listen, my producer bailed on me. Would you like to go on an investigation? I go, I want to see what you're seeing. We had an encounter where me and Richie went out in the woods in his backyard, and we found a track, and as he's looking at the footprint, I decided to like go a few feet away from him to check out these tracks.
Yeah.
And then he had this like awful smell, which he called the deer smell. He goes, hey, it's that deer smell. I'm like, oh boy, I don't smell it. So I approached him. As I'm approaching him, he's like, hey, it's gone. I go, that's just weird. And I'm looking around and don't see anything, but it, straight ahead is very thick. But like 1 o'clock over and 11 o'clock over, I can see like a good 50, 60 yards. And then we decided to like walk more into the woods, try to follow the smell, if we can pick it up again. And then that's when we just heard these loud snaps, like these four heavy steps. And you hear like high snaps. You could see the brush shaking, and I just froze. That it just feels like the power, and then it's just a dead stop.
Yeah.
I'm like, what sounds that we hear? And all of a sudden it's a dead stop, and we just looked at each other. We were like, what the heck is that? I'm like, dude, I don't know, but that's awfully big. He's like, well, what do you think we should do? I go, I don't know, what do you think? He goes, let's just go in. Try to flush him out. I go, let's do it. Right here, you got the thick part of the woods. We're just trying to, come around it, flush it out. I just think he's counterclockwise, and then as we're almost completely around, that's when this like unbelievable whistle. It was long, and it's got such a high pitch. The dog was going absolutely crazy. It's almost like just a sonic sound. It was just bizarre. Every time we kept saying, "What is that? What's that?" It was little whoops or some mimic that we just don't understand.
Yeah.
But it was it was very chilling, and it did freak us out. But we stuck it out for another hour or so, and that was it for that investigation. And then like a few weeks later, we went to another destination, did an investigation out there, and then all of a sudden we found a print. And it's funny how we find prints. There's always something going on. But Richie has like great hearing, and he's got like sonic hearing. It's unbelievable. But he said that he hears a sound like way off in the distance, like a shuffling sound. I go, I don't hear nothing. And he goes, that's just weird. And while he's on live, I can overhear him say, something's not right around here. He goes, it feels weird in here, and I feel that it's gonna be like, something big's gonna happen.
2 weeks ago, I was on a live and I said something's gonna I feel the vibe. Yep, and sure enough, it ran through the woods right over here by us. And he's like, dude, you just said that. Like, he was like, I couldn't, afterwards, he goes, I can't believe you said it, and then something happened. And that's just that connection that I feel that I have. And as crazy as it sounds, I don't care, it's real. It's mine, and that's what happened.
He stopped, he saw a structure, and then he yelled. I was about 15 feet away from him, and I had one of his sons with me, and all of a sudden, he said to the left. And then we all stopped, and then I could hear it's just like a shuffle, and then the woods just erupted again, and it was just a high brush shaking, snapping, and it seems like it's running through the woods. But at the same time, I'm looking, diagonally to my left, hearing all this, and Richie's like, what is that? But then to the right, I'm hearing more like crashing over there, and I just froze. I was scared.
Yeah.
That was it was more scary than the first encounter. After that, we try to clear our heads, like, what the hell did we just encounter, and what have you, and next thing you know, while videoing, I can still hear them moving. I go, Richie, they're still moving. You can still hear the snaps. I mean, it sounds like maybe like they're crouching or whatever they're doing, but it's loud snaps, like something heavy's back there. And then we've been leaving them zingers, which is a pastry that we thought we can give them as a gift. We have a gifting chair out in the woods, and which they have, we found it torn open, licked. I mean, there was just so much saliva. The piece of cardboard on it was all licked off. And then we just put it in a casing as evidence, but it was just so much fluid in there. It was remarkable. But anyways, as I pulled out one of my zingers, I was scared. So here's my scary moment. Pull out my zingers, here is your friend. I'm the one that's giving you the treats or whatever. Because my heart's pounding because I could still hear them move. And then they stopped again. I said, we're here, as your friend. I go, if you really are out there and what have you, which I know, I go, can you like give me a response? So I gave a whistle, and it whistled back.
Well,
And I looked at Rich, I'm like, oh my God. I go, I'm literally peeing my pants like, oh, he's right there, right in there. And so that's my encounter out there with Richie. And
so you've never seen one, but you've heard them.
no, not yet. But I'll tell you, both incidents, I'm not kidding you. I thought they would have just come right out.
Obviously, your story was something that really kind of was it brought a lot of news to the town, a lot of news to the Bigfoot community.
Yeah.
That night, I mean, what were kind of your first impressions when you saw it? I mean, what was first running through your mind?
My first thought was, you got to live it with me, because something told me to turn my spotlight on now. Something just told me to do it, and right off the kitty corner of my car, here's this creature standing there, 7.5, 8 foot tall, 400 pounds, maybe more, maybe a smidgen less, staring at me. And as soon as I hit it with my spotlight, it brought his hands up like this, put his head back, and just let out such a deep, guttural, from the bottom to the top of the scale. And it lasted probably 10, 15 seconds. And at 30 feet, I guesstimated it was 30 feet. It was just like me blowing a tuba right directly in your face. I could feel it in my chest. I had my hand up, the hammer pulled back on the gun, and all I could hear in my head, believe it or not, was, I'm not going to hurt you. I'm not going to hurt you. And while all this is going on, I'm standing there looking at something that don't exist. I didn't go out as a complete non-believer. Why should I disbelieve my brother, his friend? My father was a sergeant here in Whitehall, 2 New York State troopers, 2 deputy sheriffs that all saw it. Why should I doubt them? But I went out for my own curiosity, and it's the trooper that went out with me, and he was on duty, went out for my own curiosity, and thank God I stayed where I did. For months and months and months after that, we were all made fun of, and and these same guys that are made fun of me are some of the, not the festival, but different things we used to have in the park, whittling little Sasquatches and all that stuff, making money off it, see. And I embarrassed one guy so bad that the people that were buying things put them right back down and walked away from the table. I said, there's one of the guys who used to make fun of me all the time, and the rest of the family. I couldn't trim them up because the stuff we used was so brittle. I tried to, get the outline, and it started breaking off too much, and I said, no, I'm not going to leave them as they are.
Yeah, that's incredible.
But I mean, to get one just before the festival, which in itself is a miracle.
Yeah.
And a double. That's 2 different ones right there, as you can tell, well, just by the size.
Yeah.
Adolescent and adult, possibly. That's my guesstimation.
Yeah, I mean, that's a Bigfoot. I mean, I got.
Well, that's the biggest one I've ever.
That's a Bigfoot.
The biggest one I've ever cast is right there, and they tell me it's the biggest one in the United States.
My name is Joseph M DeAndrade, and I'm a paranormal investigator and expedition leader. And from my first expedition team to investigate the mysteries of the Bridgewater Triangle in the summer of 1985. Before I ever found out about the Bridgewater Triangle, I heard about a creature called Bigfoot, although this Indian guy said Sasquatch. I didn't know what he's talking about. Didn't know about the Triangle of the Swamp. But in any case, I saw the article about the Bridgewater Triangle in somebody's kitchen in their apartment, and that's how I found out about that. A few years after I had the Bigfoot sighting in the winter of '78, shortly after I heard about the creature, I decided to go out there, and just look around in the winter '78. Although I hate winter and the snow was this high, it was a good thing. It all worked out great. What happened is something I never thought would, and never changed my life. And it's made it better, actually. So get out there into it's called Claybanks 2. And as I arrived there with this other guy, not the Indian guy, and we walked halfway around the pond, and there was a big impression in the snow, like a bear had sat there, but no footprints. I found that strange. So therefore, after that, I went back to where we started from, and had a box to the pond. He lit his pipe, and suddenly I heard a voice say, "Turn around." And I don't go around hearing voices too often. And so I said, "All right, why?" And it said, "Turn around and you will see." So it's like, oh, brother. So I was very skeptical. I was, sure, okay. Turning around like, oh, boy. And I look at it like, what is that? So I feel like it's like a tall person, long dark brown hair all over it, walking really slow. And then I said to Wayne, look at it. Banana brain wouldn't look. And so I'm not an aggressive person. I didn't do anything. I just kept, I told him. But I kept staring at it. I was in shock, and I saw nothing like it. It's like, I thought I was seeing things. And so, because that's what the Indian guys to talk about. Some tall, furry man-like creature that walks upright called Sasquatch. And I was, that must be the thing,
Yeah.
So finally I said to Wayne, well, you look, I was getting a little mad. And then finally I turned around again and I said, what's that head? And I was like, oh, then I said, Wayne, will you look, And then so fine, he never looked. So I'm the only one who saw it. But I know what I saw. I'll never forget it. And the Indian guy used to tell me about it and how his uncle and him, shot what they thought was some kind of bear, and it gave out a half animal, half human cry of pain. So that must have been a creature that I saw that day. Now, you left, that was it for that day. But then after I met Mike in the shoe factory. We used to work together. He taught me how to camp. And then I think it wasn't the springtime. I don't know. I didn't write down months. But when I saw the creature, it must have been in February of 78. I know the year was 78. And then maybe 2 or 3 months later, we went over to the same spot where I saw the impression in the snow. Again, good thing I went. Because this time Mike went with me. He's the guy that taught me how to camp. And Banana Brain Wayne with me, totally useless. And we got a campfire going just for the heck of it. We were there about an hour at the most. And then Mike went with his rifle, and Wayne went with his flashlight, and I had my machete.
Okay.
So they went
ready
for firewood. So I said, hey, I'm not going to be a lazy bum. I'm going to go help out. So they're up there in the path. I go over there in the woods. It was getting dark all of a sudden. And I'm picking up sticks as I'm walking. It was like maybe 30 feet at the most in the woods. And I went to pick up the last stick. You wouldn't believe what I heard. 8:32. Okay? And as I went to pick it up, it went, Wah! Really loud, like angry, fierce, like it wanted to tear me apart. And, I was like, whoa, what the heck, That's what most people would have dropped everything.
Yeah.
But I picked up the stick, put it in my hand, pulled out my machete, I said, better than nothing. I'm back. And then Mike comes out, hey, Joe, what the hell was that? And I'm like, well, you heard it, you tell me. And because he's the expert, he didn't tell me how to get bear, bobcat. And he goes, no, I know all the animals in the woods. It wasn't anything like that. I was like, well, it was very scary, man. I don't scare easily, but I was very scared. So therefore, we were there around it was not a campsite. We went camping, but I said, this fire's got to go on. So whatever it was, if it wanted to kill us, it could have killed us. So we got the fire out with something. I don't know what. Maybe it had a canteens. And Wayne was already taken off. I never wanted anything to do with him after that. And so we finally leave, and that was the end of that. But after I saw it and I heard what I heard, I went out there and eventually I was able to. It was Mike and I and this Portuguese guy. He just come from Portugal, and he didn't believe any of it. And so I said, so we just went there to camp, so what the heck of it? No, 3 guys, instead of just 2. And at night, we did hear like a big frog or something, but that was it. Things are quiet. It was just quiet. Now, recently, my expedition member and he said that, he's too afraid to go camping in that area because I told him all those campsites that suddenly they don't stay too long.
Right.
Something destroys the campsites there. It just gets me all excited when I think about it because the last campsite was the worst of all. It was a complete disaster.
Really?
Whatever happened there, the sleeping bag was all torn to pieces like a big bear or something. Some creature clawed it up. Table broken in half. And my expedition member, Lonnie, well, she moved to South Carolina now, so I don't have her anymore. I miss her so much. And it was horrible. It's just stuff all over the place. 2 tents thrown everywhere. Whatever it was, the person was, they were angry. And then she found a rifle. I grabbed the rifle. I ain't an expert on firearms, but whoever owned it didn't get a chance to use it because the safety was still on. So I was like, well, this doesn't look good. And, my expedition member says, I'm not camping in these woods. So the point is, something big out there, person or animal, or Bigfoot.
Let me ask you this. Do you think Bigfoot is Is it what? I mean, what do you think Bigfoot is? Do you think it's just like, is it another mammal? Is it part of the paranormal realm, another dimension? I mean, what are your thoughts?
That's a good question. I've thought about it so many times because I believe in God. I believe in the
same.
Bible, you know.
You and me both.
Yeah, good. And I was saying it because I don't think it was on the ark.
Yeah.
Apparently, you know, it's obviously half human. It's very intelligent. So something must have happened. You know, maybe somebody had sex with a monkey. I don't know.
So there was an incident where the couple, who's now deceased, they never saw anything on their property, but there was a handprint that was left somewhere. Wayne King came out to investigate and photograph and take measurements. And so that handprint was 11 inches. So there's 11, there's my hand right there. So you can kind of see the difference. 11 inches by 7 inches wide. And then there was another handprint that was recorded in Fort Bragg, California from February of 1962. And we've had, for the people who get the Bigfoot Times newsletter, we've had many editions almost back to back on the breaking news of a very old case from Fort Bragg. And that handprint was 11 and a half inches long. So just a ginormous handprint, and it doesn't look like just an expanded version of a person's handprint. It looks quite a bit different once you start to look at it. And so in this instance, in Dansville, Wayne King went to investigate, and he says, I'm not going to be releasing the photos until they're copyrighted. I don't think that if they ever saw the photos ever saw the light of day in a newspaper article. But I'll be writing to him. I haven't been in touch with him for a million years, and asking if he could release this information, because this is the data that drives the idea that Bigfoot could possibly be a real species. And so I wanted to talk to you. So that's another case, and that happened in the late 1970s. But that's the type of information, that's the type of evidence that makes the case for Bigfoot compelling.
One time they broke a tree off by me when I was by myself. When I walked out the trail, and here's a broken tree. One time I was camping up by Luzerne with 3 other guys, and I think I got hit with a pine cone. And the other 2 guys were at the campfire, and the other fellow was holding flashlight for me. So we were a long ways, 30, 40 yards from the wood line, and there was no people. We didn't see any pickups around or anybody else. And they wouldn't have known what we were doing anyhow, but anyhow, got hit with a pine cone. So and then I recorded, I don't know if you guys listened, to about 7 minutes of what I call a mad ape in Kentucky.
I recorded it. These things are like pissed off. Yeah. There's only people back here. There's a yellow cone. No, that's not a person. That's. That's impressive.
One guy wanted to say it was coy dog, but I don't think any kind of dog could have done what I was recording there. So yeah, I've had quite a few experiences actually.
I start hearing step, crunching in the leaf litter on the game trail. And it took maybe 1 or 2 steps and it stopped. And at this point, I mean, I had already been into Bigfoot for a long time, but Bigfoot was not in my mind at all because I was in a very small town right outside of the property of a high school where my kids went to school. And it was just, and then it hit me and I was like, oh my God, this is a huge 12-point buck. He smells deer estrus on my clothing, and he's following me back to my seat.
Yeah.
And I was like, my heart just started pounding. I'm like, this is the biggest deer anybody has ever seen. I'm gonna be on newspapers and magazines. And so I started slowly walking again, and I heard crunch, 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 crunch. Eventually get back to this deadfall where my gun was. And I had a bucket that I was sitting on. And I never turned around, But now I'm thinking, how am I going to reach my shotgun with the least amount of movement?
Right.
Because I don't want to spook it.
Right.
So I was able to reach, grab the barrel of my shotgun. I pulled it up like this, flipped the safety off. In my head, I'm thinking, okay, so I'm going to take one step back with my left leg. I'm going to turn at the waist at the same time. It's going to be right there in front of me. I'm going to take the shot. It's going to be in the chest, but he's close enough it'll go through.
Yeah.
And I went, and I just barely turned, and I heard this, and I hear thump thump. And I turned, and there's nothing. There's nothing. And I'm like looking around, and I'm looking for a big white tail,
Right.
running away from me. And all I ever heard was boom, boom. I heard 2. I didn't hear 4. I didn't hear 8. I didn't hear 16. I didn't hear it taking off down the trail.
Right.
All I heard was thump, thump after a really, really loud exhale. And I start looking for like twigs bouncing or a leaf, floating back down to the ground or something. And there was nothing.
Huh.
Absolutely nothing. And I'm like, what the hell? So, I'm all jacked up. My heart's beating really quick. And again, I'm not thinking Bigfoot at all. And I'm like, oh my God, that was the biggest deer anybody would have ever seen.
Yeah.
And so I stepped 3 steps back into the property that I didn't have permission. I had my shotgun, and I'm looking into the woods. It could have gone far because you didn't hear it running off into the distance. And I'm looking, I'm scanning, I can't see anything. Finally, I walk back. I walk out of that woods into the grassy area that's maintained. And I started walking back down the row of trees to go back to my car, which was about 125, 135 yards. And I'm walking along the edge of the tree line. And as I'm walking, I'm hearing steps in the leaves in the tree line. And I had a pretty decent flashlight. I pulled it off in my hand, shining it. And it's not completely dark yet. I mean, it's getting there, and I'm shining the light in there as I'm walking. And I can hear it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see a damn thing. There's no squirrel, there's no deer, there's no turkey, because there's a lot of turkey roost in that area. And it followed me 2/3 of the way to my car, and then it stopped. But when I got very close to the back of the garage, that the house that was on that property, that's when it stopped.
Yeah.
So it didn't go beyond that into, and it wasn't until a couple of years afterwards where I started kind of putting it together. And it's like, that's why, like with my show and, really big shows like Sasquatch Chronicles, or listening to Steve Isdall on YouTube when he reads emails from people who have had experiences, it's constantly putting together what you've heard that makes sense. Yeah. And he always calls them puzzle pieces, and literally they are, because it was kind of all at once that it dawned on me. It's like, okay, so I had 2 footsteps behind me. It didn't sound like a horse trotting. It didn't, And if you listen to a deer walk and a horse walk, it's very similar, other than the clip-clop from the hooves. When you add 2 extra legs into it, it doesn't sound like a human walking.
Right.
And this sounded like, at first, I thought it was the landowner. And then I convinced myself that it was a deer, but it was always just crunch, 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 crunch. And it wasn't until a couple of years after that I kind of put it all together, and I was like, was it?
Yeah, wow.
I don't know, but when you start hearing, and I guess you can, I guess it's easy to draw a point from A to point B without it being true, but sometimes, like, the simplest answer is the right answer.
Christine Van Aker. She went to the police with her account. It was first her and her 3 girlfriends literally out looking for this monster at night. And I guess they heard growls according to the YouTube video. And I guess those girls got dropped off and her mom got in the car and they were out. And one of these things, I guess a Bigfoot, had come up to the vehicle and apparently put its hand through the windows, which were down on the Impala car. And I'm assuming it gave her a black eye by just putting the palm right into her face, because there's a photo of her that's in several Bigfoot books, early Bigfoot books, of her with the black eye, and she's still living. And I'm just assuming that she received so much ridicule over the years that she kind of probably stopped talking about it. It was pretty warm. I was sleeping in a hammock outside, and the way I remember it, I had the zipper on my sleeping bag open because it was so warm. One of the guys in our crew, because it wasn't just the family, there was other people that were from Texas with us. They came and kind of woke me up. They said, wake up, somebody's throwing rocks. So we're in a heavily wooded area in a campground. And it was hard for me to wake up because I was in a pretty sound sleep. But I did wake up, and he said, somebody's throwing rocks. And so I'm trying to process this information, and then I hear a thud on the dirt, and I said, it really woke me up because I could hear it, that something was being thrown. Got out of my sleeping bag, and the impression I got was that somebody was throwing rocks from a good distance, and the impression I got, having played baseball, is that those rocks were coming in underhanded, like this, being lobbed like this, because you could see it as the rock was landing within the 5 feet. And it was interesting because it was dark out, and these rocks were landing very close to us but not hitting us. I had seen on In Search Of, the long defunct television series with Leonard Nimoy narrating, that one of the people that was interviewed on the show said something like ook ook, because that was a native language of Bigfoot or whatever. And I just remembered that. I never really gave it any thought, but I remember yelling out in the woods from the campground, ook ook. And then what came back was this long drawn out grr. You could just think of it with a G, a lowercase g with a bunch of R's, just grrr. And then it went quiet, and that was it. Everything stopped. No more rocks. We never saw anything. We never saw who was throwing the rocks. The next day, we went up to look, but as that stopped, I was still thinking that someone was playing a prank on us, so I surveyed our party. Were we all accounted for? And everyone, some of the people were sleeping in the Chevy Suburban wagon with the seat folded down, and they had sleeping, and I said, yeah, there they are, they're all there. And so to this day, in that area, I don't know what was throwing the rocks that were the size of about a baseball, but someone was throwing rocks, and I'm open to the possibility that it may have been a Bigfoot, because I don't know any other animal in the woods that could throw rocks. Right. And it didn't scare me. It was kind of surreal that something like this could be happening. And so that kind of, again, I wouldn't say it was Bigfoot, but my other option was like, what else could it have been? If it was a person joking, we would have found that person, I think, because we went up to, the way I remember it, this is a long time ago, 42 years ago, we went up with flashlights on that hill, kind of looking around, nothing. So I said, I don't know. It just remains a mystery to me.
worst thing happened at around 11:30. He must have been down where the creeks merged. He must have been right there.
Gotcha.
But he screamed. He let out this call, okay? And blood curdling, bro, like you felt it. But that wasn't the worst part. 20 seconds later, maybe, another one, the same exact scream, but from about a mile away. And I was like, oh, great. He's done called Larry and the boys, and we're about to have a good party. You know what I mean? So at that moment, it was kind of like, bro, you're in the ape enclosure. You know what I mean? We've came to the zoo, we've crawled in the enclosure, and we set up tents. But hey, that was it. After that one call from a distance, I guess he went to it. We were absolutely scared that, oh, he's calling them in.
Or do you think it transported that quickly and it wasn't it?
Oh, like, I don't know. I never thought about that.
Do you think Bigfoot has like paranormal powers or like supernatural powers at all?
Well, like I said, I don't know how the thing got up the hill and made no noise. And you're not going to do that to me.
Yeah.
You ain't going to sneak up on me when I'm scared.
Right.
There's no conversation on this planet that I'm going to get into with any living person that's going to distract me like that.
Years ago in the Ocala National Forest of Florida, I chased something through the woods that had been hitting a can. And this was in January, no one out there. But I never could catch up with it. It was one step ahead of me. I had a flashlight and eventually I had to stop because I was just sort of running pell-mell. And I'm like, I will get lost in here. So there's those times when you don't see it. The most definitive encounter actually didn't happen until earlier this year, believe it or not. And this was in the Boggy Creek area near Fouke, Arkansas. And I've had some possible sightings up there in the past. The thing was a little bit too far away for me to say 100%. But in this case, this was back in April. I had gone up there in search of what I call a boneyard, for lack of a better term, because I had been up there and found these hog skulls that had been piled up. And someone told me that they had come across a pile of, like a bone pit where there was deer and hog bones in it, which I thought was odd because a lot of people shoot hogs and throw them, but usually people don't throw deer carcasses, in that. So I thought, okay, I'm going to go find this. So myself and another longtime research friend and my girlfriend was with us, and we hiked in there late one afternoon and hiked around. We're looking for this thing, and it's a very swampy area. It's literally like a lake that looks like something out of like a horror movie. It's very swampy and dark back in there. And we were hiking along. It's like kind of a creek that runs there, looking for footprints, looking for the bones. Never saw the bones. And they were about 20 yards back. And this was getting later in the evening, and we had been in there for probably at least 3 hours walking. All of a sudden, I kind of see a game trail, and I walked up that just simply because I'd been mucking through this mire. And I'm like, an open space, And I walked up, and about the time I got about 10 yards up it, I heard something sound like footsteps, something walking. And obviously, there's been no one out there. And I look up, and first I see what looks like a leg. Then I see another leg kind of come out from the brush. I mean, there's tree cover and open spaces. And then within just seconds, I see what looked like an entire body just walk out and walk bipedally for about 3 or 4 seconds right between some trees and cover right there, probably no more than like 30 yards from me. And within those few seconds, your mind goes from, there's a person out here, it's a hog, it's a bear, and then you just kind of go, that's none of those. This is not wearing clothes. It's fully upright. Definitely not a bear. I would estimate about 7 feet tall. The best way I can describe it, it looked very black, like literally just deep black. And if you've ever driven by a field where you see cows, like in the late evening, if you look at the black ones, they are just black. It looked that way, and it sort of disappeared into the brush. And at that point, I basically had two choices. One, to kind of run after it so I could get a better view. And of course, I couldn't get my camera out in that split second. It happened too fast. Or I can tell the others what I just seen. And I thought, well, maybe I should tell them, because now there's 3 people looking. And so I didn't run straight after it, and I went, and I had to go about 15 yards down and they were talking and try to tell them what I saw, and let's start looking. And by the time that happened and we sort of descended in there, wherever this thing went out of sight, it wasn't there. And we spread out and looked and never saw it. A lot of leaf litter. I didn't see any footprints. And it was just that fast. And unfortunately, they weren't looking, and we just couldn't find it. I regretfully should have probably just ran after, because when you see something like that, you want to see it longer.
Yeah.
And then sort of the adrenaline takes over. And but I mean, I can definitively say what it wasn't. It wasn't human. It definitely wasn't a bear. It looked like a large black bipedal creature of some sort, and I saw it. It was what daylight there was within the trees. Saw it clear enough to be confident that's what I saw.
In looking at the indigenous people's beliefs in these creatures and how they describe them, both physically, spiritually, and whatnot, there's a vast difference between them. No two are the same, and you can have varying degrees of interpretation with communities or tribes very close to one another. And I suspect that's because there was very little interaction with these creatures, because these creatures are so highly elusive. And that would explain why the indigenous peoples have a different understanding of them. They don't agree. Some of them feel that they were man-eaters, human-eaters. Some feel that they are the guardians of the forest. Some say that they would capture children, the women. Some name them devils of the forest. Others name them gentle giants. So there's quite an extreme of descriptions. And I think that's because even the people that lived closest to them didn't fully understand them, had very little interaction. You have to figure that for these creatures to have eluded us for so long, they must be really elusive, skittish, and a level of intelligence that's beyond, say, a mountain lion or a bear. Nowadays, I think there's more encounters because there's more people out hiking and doing what they do in nature, and then logging, mining, and whatnot. So I think that there's a lot more sightings, and plus we hear about more sightings because we can document them. And when you have, native cultures who say these things exist, they didn't have a habit of making up animals. They might point out spirits and things of that nature, but when it comes to animals, there's coyotes, there's wolves, there's bears, there's, this and that, and there's Sasquatch for the vast majority of them throughout North America. Not just one or two, but for the vast majority of them. Great distances between them, describing I shouldn't say virtually the same thing because there are differences, but you're talking about a hairy creature that walks upright. Let's just say that much.